Welcome to the chaos sector. We want to once again address the private driver issue. It's still being depicted as Moscow's Eric Gower by some in the comments. Now let's review what we know about Moscow's Eric Gower. He is an alumni from the University of Idaho, check. He's a program director for the university's Outreach Youth Program, check. His hometown is Kamiah, Idaho, check. He currently resides from what is currently known in Moscow, Idaho, check. He has a wife who works for the police department in some capacity, check. Now, to just put this all into perspective briefly, we review Gower's LinkedIn profile. Quote, as the director of Bridge, Idaho, I oversee 2 federal upward-bound grants that serve low-income and or potential first-generation high school students. My goal is to help them achieve academic success and access higher education opportunities. I have a bachelor's degree in recreation, a master's degree in movement and leisure sciences, and I am currently pursuing a PhD in education with an emphasis on character development from the University of Idaho. I have more than 6 years of experience in TRIO programs, where I have developed skills in event planning and management, leadership, and federal grant management. I have also obtained multiple certifications, such as CPR, first aid, scuba, and Part 107 drone pilot. I am passionate about providing quality education and support to students from diverse and underrepresented backgrounds. I have strong communication skills and social services professional. I am always eager to learn new things and collaborate with others to achieve positive outcomes. Unquote. Gower was a youth outreach coordinator from August 2017 to March 2021, then became an associate program director from March 2021 to April 2023, and is currently a program director, which was from April 2023 to present. Now, once again, we review that resume, which is why people assumed he was the private driver. Under certifications, we see it says university-approved driver, right? And also under training, it consists of safety and security awareness and safe routes to school. Now, although this is a public service, it's more of a university service, meaning this service that Gower provides does not include being a designated driver for students on Saturday nights. The words private driver or rideshare driver are not listed in this resume. And that's important because that's a specific service as opposed to being an approved driver or providing safe routes to school for students. You understand? It would be off campus, like calling Gower to come pick students up from, well, the grub truck or the corner club on the weekends. Although Eric Gower does help the youth and even students at the university, this would be a bit too much on his plate. Somewhat of a conflict of ethics, to be honest. Imagine being called to pick up some drunk college students who for some reason don't have a designated driver in their circle. He drives out, picks them up, and they're barfing in the back seat of his vehicle, or they're a little too wasted and pass out. Now he has to take them to the hospital, etc. And he would have to gather himself and return to his actual job as a program director. Eric Gower is also married, so that late-night activity combined with his already busy schedule is too much for a marriage. He's already married to someone who works for the police department, so their household is like another job, with evenings going over paperwork. Simply put, you need time for marriage, and being a private driver for students on the weekends, off campus, I might add, is a recipe for disaster in that marriage. Okay, some may still question it and say, well, Gower's a man of dedication and wants to make sure students are getting home safe after partying. Yeah, that's understandable, but can he do that alone? Why wouldn't there be multiple drivers for this? But let's get to the main reason. The private driver was not Eric Gower. Many claim Gower has a white truck, right? Of course, we've seen the white truck pass the girls in the footage with Jack walking down Main Street. Check. Then we see a white truck in the leaked neighbors footage. Okay, check. The vehicle that is seen in the window's reflection of the grub truck surveillance. Well, that's not a truck. It's a car. How do we know it's a car instead of a truck? Because of the ride height. How do we know the ride height is lower than the truck's ride height? Because the headlights are obviously lower to the road than those of a truck. Let's examine once again. Oh, some may say he drove his other vehicle. Which one is it then? First, it was a white truck. Some even said it may have been a blue car that picked them up. We see the 3 slat taillight design of a Mustang, and now we focus on the headlights as well. Let's see here. If you look at the vehicle's headlights upon pulling up, we can clearly see that the bumper or the body frame of the vehicle is lower to the ground than that of a truck. A truck would obviously be higher, and the headlights would be higher. Despite the distortion of a window's reflection, the physical position of the vehicle is lower to the road than a truck. And also, the design or shape of the headlights is of a car, not a truck. A car hood is sloped upwards, all the way to the dash window, and the front of the car, including the grille, the bumper, and the headlights, are usually a bit sloped in this same angle. Trucks, on the other hand, have a straighter hood design all the way to the dash window. We see that the headlights are longer along the side portion of the design, as it slopes upwards, aligned with the sloping design of the front of a car's body type. Most truck headlights are more rectangular, and also along the side portion, due to the box shape of the truck's body frame. Now let's examine the side view of a Ford Mustang to see if those headlights match. Now the vehicle in question, the red Mustang, appears to be a fourth generation, ranging from 1999 to 2004. Okay, examining the headlights in this side view, it does resemble the headlights of the vehicle in the window's reflection. Combined with the taillights, which resemble those of a Mustang, it is more than likely a Mustang. Now, those taillights sometimes look different in that reflection, and some may say, well, where's the middle light in the three-slat taillight design of the Mustang? Good question, but there are several reasons it doesn't appear to be the three-slat design. One reason would be that the angle of the car does not display the outer light on the right-hand side, as it's on the edge near the outer panel. As you see here, the Mustang is captured at an angle, so 3 lights are displayed on the left side, but only 2 on the right side. And even then, the left tail lights and its lighting would appear to be just one big light in surveillance, and also a window's reflection of that tail light, which increases the glare of the light. Okay, then there's another possibility. It could be due to a tuning called taillight sequencers, which have different lights on and others off. We did a bit of research on this because we did wonder about that despite claiming it was a Mustang. So with this tuning, the taillights have flashing sequences that you can cycle through. One that I noticed, especially for the 3-slat taillight design of the Mustang, we checked, of course, is that 2 of the slats would be on while the 1 slat wasn't. And this sequence can display only 2 slats during turning or accelerating. I'm sure it could also display that sequence in the parked gear. So this would explain why it doesn't appear to be the 3-slat design of the Mustang's taillights. Could be wrong, could be a totally different vehicle. But those taillights surely look like those of a Mustang. And let me add, this tuning, along with the black rims that were on that abandoned red Mustang, shows that there was tuning done to the vehicle. I mean, it's a Mustang, V6 or V8 convertible. It doesn't matter. Mustangs are American muscle, and most guys will eventually tune them, even if it's cosmetic work. With that black front bumper, either they crashed prior or they were planning on replacing the original one with a custom Mustang front bumper. Mustangs are built to race, so it's not shocking that there were tunes done to the vehicle, including altering the taillights. But someone left a comment and claimed it was a white Dodge Ram 2500, which apparently is what Eric Gower drives. Now, I think they're missing the main point here. Even if Eric Gower did drive a white Dodge Ram 2500, and that would be the same vehicle spotted in those videos, well, for one, it clearly isn't a truck in the grub truck footage, and for two, that truck's ride height is even higher, as it appears to be set on off-road tires. Also, who was interviewed claiming to be the private driver from Pullman, Washington? Did Eric Gower pretend to be from Pullman to prevent people from knowing he was the private driver from Moscow, Idaho? Then why even allow your name to be revealed in the PCA? After all, Moscow PD concealed the DoorDash driver's identity, right? You see, that doesn't make sense. But for what it's worth, we'll just examine all of that footage for clarification. They also state that this is the same white truck seen in the surveillance of the girls and Jack walking down Main Street. Let's examine that footage to see if it's a Dodge Ram 2500. To be honest, can't really tell what type of truck that is. Based on the taillights, they do resemble those of a Dodge Ram. So yeah, perhaps that's a Dodge Ram, but that doesn't prove it's Eric Gower's Dodge Ram, because, well, we haven't established that Eric Gower even drives that truck. Please provide a source of the claim he drives a Dodge Ram, because that information would have to come from someone in Moscow, such as a student or someone who knows him. That's all we asked. If you claim something as a fact, just provide the evidence and we'll accept it. As for the white truck from the neighbor's camera footage, can't tell what make that is, but it does have an extended bed, it appears. Maybe it's the view, but to me, that doesn't look like the same white truck in the main street surveillance. And there is another white truck parked, which would be the next door neighbor's driveway. And let's touch on that briefly. With all those vehicles parked at that home, we know they heard most of that violence, and some may have saw something as well. They were neighbors, yet nobody has come out, to our knowledge, claiming to hear or see anything. They haven't been interviewed by the mainstream media. Absolutely nothing. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, some of them moved out, right? That next morning, I believe they were seen packing and moving out of that home. Oh, why are you leaving? Oh, because of the tragedy that happened next door. Or was it because you didn't want to be interviewed about what you obviously heard or even saw that night? It's all of the above, actually. But Dot, who claims to stay in the house next to that neighbor's home, claimed she heard screams, and later that morning stated she saw Dylan, Bonnie, and Clyde, and other unidentified individuals. Yet everyone attempted to debunk her, but didn't scrutinize the other neighbors who we know heard and saw things that night. But is this the same white truck on Main Street? Even if it is the same white truck, it doesn't prove that. For one, it's Eric Gower, and for two, it's still not the vehicle that picked the girls up. If anything, it actually appears to be someone following the girls, which was a theory that many people had, including us early on. Maybe this person or group of persons were following the other vehicle, which would be the so-called private driver, and they followed them home. Interesting. Remember the so-called private driver's accounts in their interview, where they spoke about someone potentially following them? Yeah, the context clues sprinkled all throughout that interview proves he was aware of a danger at the least. Now he was interviewed by several news stations, such as Law and Crime, News Nation, and I think also Daily Mail. Maybe some were simply copied and republished, but what was stated proves the actual scenario did not play out like he claims. He wondered if there was something he could have done differently that night, and even felt a sense of guilt. Why feel a sense of guilt? Based on how you depicted everything, it was a typical night, right? The girls were talking and having a good time in the back seat, no danger, no one was following you, there was nothing abnormal about the neighborhood when arriving. Where's the guilt coming from? Let me explain a bit, because key terms used indicate, well, guilt. Let's say one of the girls is overheard arguing with someone on the phone in the back seat. The driver is getting a bit concerned, because she is starting to get very angry. There were a few threats heard, and her friend is also yelling into the phone to the other person on the line. The driver asks, "Are you okay?" She kind of brushes it off and says, "No, I'm scared, man." When arriving at the home, he drops them off, asks if everything will be okay, and the girls kind of have a concerned look on their faces, and just tell him, "Thanks for the ride." He doesn't watch them go all the way in the house as he pulls off. Moments later, they are grabbed by a few guys in all black with masks on, and later, they're found murdered. In this scenario, the private driver would feel a sense of guilt, as he didn't make sure those girls had completely gotten home safely, as he drove off moments before they were grabbed at their front door. He would feel guilt because he had a concern for their safety, but perhaps thought everything would be okay. He could have called the cops and just gave them the address, told them that two girls he dropped off appeared to be in a bit of danger. Based on the conversation overheard in the back seat, he would tell the authorities that he heard what sounded like threats from the person on the phone to the girls, so he just wanted to make sure they were safe that night. My point here is that the private driver didn't have any knowledge of anything that would warrant a sense of guilt, nor any indication that there was any type of danger brewing. And we can't say it's just in retrospect as he tries to paint it out to be, because once again, nothing warranted that sense of guilt. You see? He didn't pull up into the parking lot because he feared possibly being robbed. He also stated he didn't watch the girls go inside the home completely. After all, it's a relatively safe town. The statement about not watching the girls go completely inside the home is suspicious. Why? Because what does that actually indicate, or what does that have to do with driving the girls home from his perspective? The only reason that would be mentioned is if someone or something encouraged you to watch them go completely inside the home, such as, get this, an unsafe environment. You would watch them to make sure they got inside safely. But he didn't, so he is suggesting that everything was safe and secure. And yet, in that same breath, is paranoid about potentially being robbed. He's all over the place, just incoherent rambling that most people probably didn't pick up on. You can't think it's a relatively safe town and also be paranoid about being robbed. Mind you, they stated the town was so safe that people would leave their homes unlocked. I don't think that was the case, because even safe neighborhoods don't just leave their doors unlocked. He was trying to draw a contrast between before the murders and after the murders. Yeah, you're trying too hard to paint a picture of freaking Mayberry. Then it was struck by a devastating tragedy that rocked the, yeah, you're just echoing the narrative. If you drove the girls home frequently, as you knew their names, and even where they worked, the neighborhood in which you drive them to, you would be very familiar with it, and everyone would also recognize your vehicle. So unless some group of individuals started to hang around in the neighborhood causing trouble, where would the fear of being robbed come from? I'll tell you where it came from. His imagination, just like the entire interview. But then again, the part about not watching the girls? Oh, let's do the opposite here. He in fact watched the girls go completely inside the home after they ran from him. Some form of a physical altercation occurred on Taylor, where Maddie's coat was found. They ran home, and the red Mustang drove into the neighborhood, but didn't pull up to the driveway, nor the parking lot, but did watch the girls run inside the home, called his cohorts, and drove away. Yeah, see, that red Mustang drove off, because those girls were more than likely screaming. So the red Mustang tried to be discreet about their plot, drove away, and perhaps came back in another vehicle with more perpetrators. And we have to keep addressing the superhero garbage. I mean, I understand there are good Samaritans out there in society and whatnot, but come on, you're not bold enough to throw yourself into danger if you're scared of being robbed when no threats of danger existed in the neighborhood. All of a sudden, you've transformed into Batman, plowing through every possible threat to the damsels in distress. Yeah, we're being sarcastic about it because it's absurd. First of all, considering the tragedy in that town, those females would more than likely not party as much and kind of stay in tighter knit groups. Second, I'm pretty sure the guys in town have advised those females to get some protection, such as tasers, pepper spray, or even a firearm in the home. They obviously would be concerned about their household safety. They would install security systems if they didn't have them, ring door cameras, you name it. Even get security dogs, such as Rottweilers or Dobermans, both strong and protective breeds, who will definitely discourage any intruder from entering a home. So Batman wouldn't have much use, other than just making sure they entered their homes safely. And come to think about it, he's portraying those females as a bit aloof, like they're not concerned enough to take preventive measures to ensure their homes would be safe. After all, they're just a bunch of drunk college girls with no real perception of danger. Hey, Batman, they need your protection from the bad guys in town. Yeah, I got it. Somehow they're concerned enough to ask him to enter their homes to make sure it's safe, but they themselves aren't making sure the home is safe in general? Wouldn't their parents advise them to get protection? A household firearm? A protective dog? Heck, even have a male move in to be the muscle in case something does go down? The private driver is the last person who would be sought for protective measures. But of course, this impersonator is trying to make himself look like the Good Samaritan. Hey, we should get our driver to come check inside before we go in, you know. Yeah, he's pretty strong. He'll thwart all dangers with the snap of a finger. Yeah, but isn't he the same guy who was paranoid about getting robbed? I mean, yeah, we're going overboard with it. Remember, we don't know who was driving in that area because the neighbor's surveillance hasn't been released. I bet we would see a red Mustang snooping into the neighborhood and then driving back to Taylor. So to just keep magnifying that the person being interviewed was not Eric Gower, we point out another key element. The individual claiming to be the private driver tells Law and Crime that they spend most of their days shuttling people around town. Oh, really? Well, this isn't Eric Gower, because he spends most of his days being a freaking director for the youth outreach program at the University of Idaho. Mind you, Gower is not as engaged with the youth directly as he was when he was a youth outreach coordinator. He was promoted to assistant director, then one of the head directors, meaning there's not much driving students around anymore, like he would do when he was a youth outreach coordinator. Simply put, he's behind the desk more often now than before. Of course, he still engages with the youth on a personal level, but with jobs, you get promoted, you know? He would train individuals to become a youth outreach coordinator, passing the torch on to others to carry out the good deeds in the community. That's how it works. You don't stay at one position forever. If you're doing a great job, there will be offers to advance within a company. And he took them, which also magnifies the belief that he wasn't or isn't a private driver for anyone. He has more responsibility within the program. He can't be driving college students around on the weekends because it may compromise his career. Listen, college students get into trouble, a lot of trouble. Here's a program director driving some college students around who have drugs in their pocket, drunk, and causing a bit of ruckus. He's pulled over, they're searched, and the students are arrested for possession of drugs. Although Gower didn't do anything wrong, he is risking a lot interacting with the, quote, nightlife in the community. He would not risk that headache. Now, the so-called private driver stated he would take the kids to the hospital to get their stomachs pumped due to alcohol poisoning. Oh, really? This is someone who is aware of a lot, but they are not an actual private driver. They may even pretend to be a private driver. Someone left a comment regarding drug dealers posing as Uber drivers, rideshare, etc., and stated that's the easiest way to make sales and traffic those drugs, due to the disguise of the public service. Yeah, that's why Bonnie did it, an easy way to sell her drugs. We pointed that out as well, and this so-called private driver being interviewed was more than likely a drug dealer in the Pullman-Moscow area. But they definitely are a suspect in our opinions, due to the verbiage blabbered out in the interview. You understand? In the Main Street surveillance, the white truck passes by, and it parked on the road's parking section. Now, obviously, there's more footage that wasn't released here, but if this were the so-called private driver, what exactly are they doing at this point? This would be approximately 1:30 a.m., based on the reports. The group left the corner club around that time and walked to the grub truck. The girls had called the private driver beforehand and told them they will need a ride home later. The private driver says, "Okay, I'll just hang around downtown until you guys are ready to head home." They tell him they'll be grabbing some food from the grub truck, hang out for a minute, and call him when they're ready to leave. Now, all of this sounds likely. It's how that would play out. But there are obvious contradictions that prove the actual person depicted as being involved in this interaction is not the person who drove those girls home. We just went over them. But again, Moscow's Eric Gower would not claim to be from Pullman, Washington. He has nothing to deceive the public about, if it was just an unfortunate night, right? In fact, if he were the private driver, pretty sure his identity would have been revealed despite the PCA. Now, can someone prove that Eric Gower was revealed as or depicted as the private driver before the PCA revealed that name? I'm going to take a wild guess and say there isn't any prior information or evidence that proves he was the private driver. And then you have the interview once again. It just throws all types of suspicion into the equation. Knowing that Kohberger stayed 1,200 feet from your doorstep, spotting his vehicle, and claiming it appeared, quote, too new. And what were you doing as the so-called private driver? Oh, okay. Private driver turns into private investigator. Oh, okay, I get it. You were driving around looking for white Hyundai Elantras because it's not like that vehicle was a next-door neighbor or owned by someone in your specific neighborhood. Let me guess, you just so happened to spot that vehicle parked at Kohberger's apartments? Really? Seems like you had someone in mind already. And then that makes us wonder, who exactly is this person being interviewed? Because it is not the private driver. It's someone who is a part of the frame of Kohberger. Think about this. They claim Kohberger's vehicle appeared too new, right? Where? Did you spot this vehicle in Kohberger's apartments? How in the hell would you know the vehicle looked too new? Do you know each and every vehicle in that apartment complex? You stay 1,200 feet from those apartments. You wouldn't know what vehicle appears too new because you don't stay in those apartments. It would be different if you actually stayed in those apartments. Then I can give that some logic. But you stay 1,200 feet from those apartments, which is 400 yards, which is the length of 4 football fields. You are nowhere near those apartments. Someone simply searched Kohberger's address, and let's be honest, there's a conspirator in Pullman. We've always said this. I guess that's a great task for us, finding out the location of this so-called private driver in Pullman, Washington. Simply get Kohberger's address and measure 1,200 feet east, west, north, and south, and figure out which location the conspirator resides in. Yeah, we'll find out. Unbelievable. You see, this is literal insanity. Let's see if my colleague is doing okay. Hey, you want to chime in on today's episode? I know it's been a bit frustrating, but we always fight through it, right?
One day at a time. I'm good. Just have to vent sometimes. Yeah, it's confirmed the so-called private driver being interviewed was a conspirator, or better yet, a suspect. You notice the mainstream media never revealed the identity of the private driver, despite it being revealed in the Pennsylvania arrest warrant? Because they know Eric Gower, or Gower, was not the private driver. And the only interview the mainstream media has is with someone who literally impersonated being the private driver. No proof that Eric Gower drives a Dodge Ram 2500. If there is some proof, then so be it. But it's not a truck in that grub truck footage, that's a car. And wait a minute. Spidey senses are alarmed. Come to think about it, well, I'm sorry, but that's damage control. Here's why. I think they are claiming Eric Gower drives a white truck to justify that it was him who drove the girls home, with the so-called supporting evidence of the white truck seen in all the footage released. Don't do that. You're going to be called out for it. That's essentially framing Eric Gower, just like JLR has done. Don't depict someone as the private driver when obviously the footage displays a car and you're claiming he drives a truck, and the interview contradicts where he resides. Not going to waste time with it anymore, at least right now. But I think what we need to focus on more is how the mainstream media just cut out Jack's warning to the girls. Because that is a trail. The attorney for the Goncalves
Hey, that's Gonzalez.
Yeah, I know. It's a shot anyway. Stated the girls were just hanging out having a conversation. Now he is the attorney for the family, and literally avoided that statement by Jack. What are you fighting for? You are avoiding key evidence that could lead, would definitely lead to killers and conspirators in Kaylee's death. The mainstream media disregarded it by cutting it out. The family's attorney disregarded it, and the family themselves disregarded it, and of course, Moscow PD disregarded it. Moscow PD cleared Jack as a suspect, but we know they asked him about that statement, or warning he gave to the girls. Bingo. There's the cover-up in a nutshell. Anyone remember our simulation of how the detectives should have handled the case? Maybe we'll bring that back, aligning with where we're at now. Just a sample size to really bring this all home. Because if there was a cover-up, then the suspect charged for the murders has to be viewed as a scapegoat. Even if Kohberger was involved, which we don't believe, he is still being the fall guy for a crime that involved multiple individuals. So even if we were to go with the theory that Kohberger is involved or even guilty of murdering those housemates, he wasn't the only killer. No release of any surveillance from the neighbor's camera, no release of the gas station surveillance, yet the authorities claimed that was the person of interest early on, then stated it wasn't the vehicle they were looking for. How can you claim it's not the vehicle you're looking for? Let me guess, you know based on the neighbor's camera footage? Because that would definitely reveal the vehicle visually with no obstructions. If Kohberger is the killer and his white Hyundai Elantra was spotted, then show the actual footage from the neighbor's camera. Heck, even the ones who leaked. How about it? Go ahead, come on, show the fucking footage for the world to see. He's already facing the death penalty. It would only confirm he was the killer, right? Would shut the chaos up pretty fast. You have the basket with some eggs in it. Why are you apprehensive in putting the rest of the goddamn eggs in the basket? Huh? He's the killer. No need to hide all of the so-called evidence. Where's the surveillance from the Albertsons? They claim Kohberger was spotted shopping in Albertsons later that day, remember? Release it. What about all of that so-called digital evidence that proved Kohberger was stalking those girls? Release that shit then. Stop claiming something and not proving this evidence exists. It only makes many think he's being framed. So, before I lose my temper again, I'll just leave it at that. I think we should work on dissecting the mainstream media's role again and also return to our simulations. The trial is being pushed back for obvious reasons, so until then, we'll just keep exposing the fuckery.
Yeah, doesn't seem that door will be opened. We can only circle around everything, which is fine though. Because it was a cover-up, there are key pieces of evidence and information that can't be linked together. And that's what frustrates the chaos. And I'm sure others who have investigated this case. It encourages many to look to threads who claim this or that. We will never rely on that source, because to be honest here, the cover-up is not just happening with the sources that have been exposed. It's also happening in threads who also execute damage control. In conclusion, DNA was discovered in that red Mustang. They tried to get rid of it. Maddie's coat was discovered near the fire hydrant that also had DNA on it. 3 males' DNA was discovered at the home, and then they demolished the damn thing. Seems symbolic to say, hey, let's hurry up and destroy the evidence. This is the chaos sector.